would just start with something a little bit light. What I have up on the screen, these are real write-ups and on aircraft maintenance forms. Miracle. Sounds like my kids, actually. Okay, a little bit of attitude in some of those. My name is Brook. I am senior partner for Triune Group. We are a knowledge management focused company. We also do IT development, but KM is definitely our strong suit. We've done it for one of the world's largest bureaucracies, the U.S. Air Force. That's kind of what I'll be talking about today, as well as USAID, out of the State Department, and a couple commercial companies as well. Last year, Randy Adkins was here. For those of you, some of you know Randy longer than just last year. What you may not know is he retired this year. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be able to be up here. He'd be kicking me out of this spot so that he could do it, because he really enjoyed last year's conference and set it on. So I was really pleased to be able to submit an abstract and have it accepted, to be able to be here today to talk about what the Air Force is doing in the realm of knowledge management. Now, I'm not going to get too deep because I think Randy covered some of it last year, so I'm going to kind of breeze over some of our knowledge management 101 stuff. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt. I don't want to get into lecture mode, my kids call it. So don't hesitate to interrupt. Really appreciated Rick's. That was amazing. One thing I found very interesting, I pulled out of it, was his slide where he had talked about the top-down approach of communication versus the nimble side. I think some organizations require this one over here. Some organizations require this one over here. Maybe my arm too much. So it was very interesting to see that written there. It's not, sometimes we have the tendency to think one size fits all. That we can, if we fix the culture in this direction, boom, we'll have knowledge sharing and a better culture, a better experience with knowledge management, but that's not the reality. So I'm going to say that the obvious, one obvious thing you hear at any knowledge management conference is technology is not the answer. Technology is the easy part. Anybody can stand up the technology piece of it. And I think that we've seen a lot of failures in that realm. And I do consider what we're doing for the Air Force to be a success. And unfortunately, to back that up, we tend to turn to some of the technical metrics, be it like the number of registered users in the system, the number of communities of practice. Now, I have tons of anecdotal stories to talk about where communities have come step forward and said, here's the value of what you guys are providing. And I have a couple slides in here of that as well. But I just wanted to state up front that if you feel me slipping onto the technology side and talking about that, it's because that's the easy thing to set up, and it's easy to talk about, right? I mean, it's pretty straightforward stuff. It's bits, it's bytes, it's very concrete. A few years ago, I mentioned my kids, I bought my 14-year-old son a radio-controlled car. Now, this is a high-performance vehicle. It's an electric car, about 1/18 scale, so it's about this big. But this thing, out of the box, you can fly. It can be 35 miles an hour, actual 35 miles an hour on the road. It's designed to be modified, or they call it hopped up, by the person who buys it. So you can buy all kinds of chassis and frames and battery packs for it. Well, he found out that it has an iPad battery. And one of the posts that he read, his blog he was following, said that If you could replace an iPad battery with lithium-ion batteries, your car could like go 50% faster. There's a slight problem. I don't know if anybody knows battery technology. Lithium-ion batteries are tremendous for your cell phone because the long-lasting. The thing about your cell phone is it's typically a slow drain, right? You want longevity out of it. Lithium-ion batteries can't really handle a sudden surge. In fact, they tend to explode if you have that happen. So my son wants to build a battery pack out of lithium-ion batteries to drive this car that's designed for a sudden surge, right? It's designed to have full power hit it. And I tried to talk, I knew enough about what he was talking about to try to talk him out of it. But he found a website where somebody just like him had bought individual lithium-ion batteries and built a battery pack for his exact model of car. And not only had they done it, they had the price, they had the item list of what you would need to buy. They had step-by-step instructions on how to do it, and they had pictures along with each and every step. Now, all that to say that that's a pretty obscure thing, right? A radio-controlled car, a very specific radio-controlled car, a very specific battery technology, a very specific battery pack to drive is a very specific radio-controlled car. And yet, he was able to find a pretty detailed write-up on how to build a battery pack. So I let him do it, and there were no explosions, so it was good. It was a good list and good instructions. But all that to say that, you know, this talk of digital natives and digital immigrants, I don't agree with that 100% because I'm an older guy, more than some of you people anyway. And I consider myself to be a native. I mean, I've always had the technologies. I've always, you know, the Facebook, Twitters, all that stuff. I was doing it and telling some of the young kids about it that, you know, that I interact with. Hey, have you seen this cool new technology? I don't think it's an age thing or anything. I know some of those barriers exist in a lot of organizations. I just don't see it necessarily as always tied to age. So all this to say that the knowledge workers have changed and the needs have changed. Mix that change in the way knowledge workers and with the aging workforce, some of whom are still able to retire financially, and we do have a pretty big imperative to get some of this knowledge sharing and knowledge exchange going successfully. The new imperatives are we need to capture the aging expertise, expanding the use of Web 2.0 technologies. Air Force Knowledge Now, this is what I think Randy talked about last time. Just a little bit about Air Force Knowledge Now, and if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. It started back around 1990 as a best practices lessons learned repository database, pretty basic database. It's slowly morphed over time, and there's lots of stories, and I'm skipping over here, but it's slowly morphed over time into a community of practice model, and the system currently hosts more than 16,000 virtual communities, more than 325,000 registered users, and because of the way the system's architected, it is within the .mil barrier read, so we're assured that users who are hitting our system have at least national agency checks and are allowed to be on the .mil network. Because of that, we're able to open it up, and we have over 100,000 non-registered, what we call cruisers, people that haven't created accounts, that just come in and consume the content and leave. Now, because it's in the .mil, we do have non-Air Force users as well. In fact, almost 6% of our users are outside the Air Force, which we consider a tremendous success. You see some of those barriers break down across the military space. Now, I want to differentiate what I'm talking about versus what Rick was talking about. He was talking about on the battlefield. My system, the Air Force Knowledge Now system, is on the business side of running the Air Force. Pretty much anything that's not on the battlefield, those are people that are going to use my Air Force program, the Air Force Knowledge Now knowledge management system. Two quick success stories. Some of the capabilities which you would expect, Web 2.0, document management system, discussion forums, wikis, blogs, questionnaires, and an action item tracker. There's also a swarm compliant learning management system under the hood as well. And for those of you that aren't in the military realm, that stands for Shareable Courseware Object Reference Model. It's just a standard developed so that when courses are developed, if they follow this standard, it can be leveraged in different systems that have this form compliant tag. And what this LMS allows us to do is for individual knowledge owners to take courses that were developed, plug them into their community practice, make that available to their constituency within their community practice. The F-16, I hate to read. We have many success stories, and this is one of them. The F-16 pilot owner of this community, he wrote this, so I am going to read pretty much verbatim. It says, the COP program has revolutionized our operations. Our unit, the F-16 Weapons Squadron, operates the United States Air Force F-16 Weapons School. It serves as a one-stop shopping for mission planning for our students and as a source of current tactics for the rest of the F-16 community. Each squadron in the Air Force also has a subfolder which they use to upload their own academics or mission materials. This allows pilots around the F-16 community to build on the work of their peers instead of reinventing the wheel. We also use our COP for communicating information relevant to squadrons deploying to the desert. At least one instructor from our school is always deployed to Iraq. The deployed instructor feeds us the most current data relevant to the war, and we share it to our cops. So this is one of our communities considered to be a success story. We have an interesting way of gathering success stories because, as KM practitioners know, sometimes it's tough to decide for a return on investment. So what we do on our front page of our system, of our Knowledge Now system, is we list COP of the quarter to COP of the year. And what happens is in the Air Force, people want this award because they put it on their reviews, and they get recognition, they get a certificate, they get an Air Force Knowledge Now coin, and if you're an annual winner, you get to go on a cool trip somewhere to one of the conferences that we're going to. And that recognition, actually, it's amazing how many submittals we get. We get roughly between 30 and 50 submittals every quarter, and these are tremendous because what we have is we have users of our communities that we might not have run into on a day-to-day basis who have written up the success they're having using these virtual workspaces. So again, here I'm focused, very technology focused, because where cops work, as you can imagine, with 16,000, we have the cops are stood up very, very quickly. Somebody wants a community. There's really not a huge barrier to getting a community of practice within Air Force Knowledge Now. We have a process where it's a wizard. You fill out your form, you hit the submit button. Somebody on my team actually evaluates that to make sure that, one, it's not duplicative, see if there's anything else going on just like it, and two, make sure it's mission related. It's not somebody's phishing website they want to set up within the .mil. So that's really the only barriers that there are to having a community set up. And as a result, there are quite a few of our communities that we really don't know a lot about what's going on until they fill out their quarterly award form and send it to us. It's because there's really two approaches that we take to this knowledge management. The first piece is kind of grassroots. Anybody can have a virtual workspace. Anybody can have a community of practice. And you can do what you want with it as long as it's mission related. On the other side, we have an organizational development team, knowledge management team that has OD background, knowledge management skills, and they go into different organizations that request help, and they'll do workshops and help them develop taxonomy and break down the barriers that are within their organizations. And so by using this two-pronged approach of grassroots efforts and some top-down, we're able to get a pretty good chunk of sustained communities. The reality is we've created closer to 21,000 communities. But we have a cycle where we graveyard them, we put them away, contact the knowledge owner and say, hey, are you done? If so, do you want us to archive your content? Do you want us to burn you a CD? Because I'm trying to figure out how detailed to go here. I mean, yes?
Question. It sounds like you do a lot of maintenance here. What's your staff for maintenance?
Well, I have four people that do the vetting, make sure the cops are acceptable, that handle all phone and email support, and then graveyard them as well. A lot of that stuff is automated within the system.
And this is civilians, right?
Pardon?
These are civilians?
These are contractors. I'm a contractor.
But these are civilian contractors too, whatever.
Yes, correct. Another smart thing that we did is that support team, they're actually all retired Air Force guys. I have a full colonel, retired full colonel, retired chief master sergeant, 2 senior master sergeants who man the phone and manage the cops. That knowledge proves invaluable to the support of the system. But the system kind of, to a point, with that touch that's required to say, hey, you want this community community shut down or not. The system will notify those 4 people, hey, this community's been out of use for more than 6 months. If you want to, you should notify the knowledge. The system will prompt my support staff with a lot of that information. Because as you can imagine, in the Air Force Academy community, some of them they were there for a reason. Some cops popped up because of a source selection. We have communities that are used for source selection. But once that source selection is over, that community can go away. The content is put somewhere archived, but the collaboration that was going on can actually go away. One more success story, and that is the de-icer. On a wintry March evening, Senior Sergeant Geronimo of the 364th ELRS in Kyrgyzstan was looking for information on loading a de-icer that needed to go to Afghanistan. He hooked up in his cop with one of his coworkers who they were quickly getting the information virtually, even though they weren't the same base. They're literally out across the world. And that's really the kind of, it's that technology ended up being a tool. It was that person-to-person communication that we consider to make the knowledge management very successful. Connecting people to people, and yeah, the information flow occurred, but it was that connection that made it successful. So we are trying to expand the conversation. The problem is, and somebody mentioned an article, I want to flip over to an article. Before I do, we're trying to expand the conversation. I mentioned that Air Force Knowledge Now is behind the .mil barrier region. So you have to be on the .mil network to even have access to the system. But we look outside, and being the multiple years behind that we are what's going on in the industry, we see great tools in the social media world like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we would like to somehow link into that content. And the problem is that there's operational security concerns and barriers that go up from the information assurance people. In fact, this article is in the defense system. I'm not going to read it all. Just you can look at the title. The title kind of points out the problems that we have by doing or trying to do the things that we're talking about in our first session, for example, what the state of New York is doing with social media, and be able to tap into some of those really, really cool technologies and resources that are available right now. So what we're actually doing is we're moving some of those technologies inside. So this is just a screenshot. This is the prototype. It's not very far along, to be honest with you. But it has a familiar look, maybe a Facebook look. But the idea is we're trying to add some microblogging, some communicating and connecting with your colleagues, to be able to have the activity field that microblogging fits into, and to be able to post similar to like a Facebook wall within the system, just to add this capability to the community of practice and make it available. Obviously, there'll be a personal page, which we already have, but to expand that so that on my personal page, I can have it do something. So, just before I jump into the knowledge retention and transfer, the video capture stuff I'm going to talk about, I just need to jump to lead in with this discussion. What does it take to have knowledge management successful? If you've been in the CAM for very long, you probably have your own list. But this is the list that we kind of adhere to and follow whenever we're trying to deploy something new or some new technology or new capability or new methodology. And this has worked out pretty well for us. So I don't think, I think that any too much focus can be taken place on any one of these. At one point, a contractor came in and told the Air Force, the Director of Knowledge Management for the Air Force, that what they needed to do was to march into the AFMC commander, the 4-star general within the command, and say, you need to dictate that this knowledge sharing occurs. And so obviously they were focusing on that leadership element. Fortunately, the government person said, "Oh, get out of here, you're fired," and got rid of that contractor completely, because that's important. I'm not minimizing that at all. I think leadership buy-in is important, but to say that that is what's going to be the motivator that keeps things going is really naive, especially in an organization like the Air Force. Understand leadership changes so rapidly within the military that to expect that just because one four-star general says, "Yea, verily, we're going to do this forever," as soon as he changes jobs and the next person comes in, that could be dead if it only has leadership support. As strange as that sounds, as strange as, we tend to think, well, it's the military, a hierarchical approach, so boom, as soon as he says it, it's going to happen.
When you look at growing areas, is still some hiding or
Yes, excellent question. That is relatively new for us. However, we did implement the reduced MO velocity search engine last year. And what that allows us to do is when I do a search, it'll give me the search results. And in those search results, I can actually, as a user, I can go and tag and add tags to it, meta tagging. I can rate, and I can comment on content as well. And we've always had metadata as part of all of our content, document management systems, wikis, whatever, but we weren't using it very effectively until we implemented some search. So some of that's starting to come out. Before the formal workshops, like I'm talking about, and I'm talking about the SAF-FM, Secretary of the Air Force Financial Management Organization, very high-level Pentagon organization. There needed to be a little bit more structure. We took a look at what they do on a daily basis, and we tied that into a taxonomy. Good question. So this, for us, this tends to be a cyclical approach. We consider, okay, what short wins can we make? What wins can we take to leadership? Buy-in, improve show that to the community, get the community to understand the value, and have this leader say, "Wow, this is cool. From now on, don't ever send me a document. I'll put it into the community practice." So you have this spiral approach to collaboration. So slowly, but it becomes a lot more ingrained into how people do their business. I was at a knowledge management conference. Several years ago at Microsoft. Their KN West Summit. And at this conference, Microsoft had a CKO back then. Microsoft CKO stood up and he said, "We're Microsoft, we're doing knowledge management. We have this thing called SharePoint." Or SharePoint is really widely known now. We have this thing called SharePoint. We use it internally. All the engineers, they have it in their annual reviews. They have to put information into the knowledge base, and they get raises based on what they do. And he went on a little ad nauseum. That he was like, "Okay, you have to get it, you're brilliant, shut up, sit down." But then he paused and he goes, okay, I'm lying to you guys. Well, I was serious about all that technology stuff we have in place, but the reality is I can't get people to contribute. Because I go around to people's offices, I'll babysit your kids, I'll wash your car. Please contribute to the knowledge base. He looked at us in the audience and said, "Why is that?" And he sat down. He was done. It's kind of bizarre. And obviously the answer is, well, if I'm walking down this path, and this is my daily work job is to walk down this path, and I have to stop doing my job and go over here and do knowledge management, and then I get to go back and do my job, it's not going to happen. It's got to be baked into how people do their job. And that's the challenge that we face in the Air Force, working with the Air Force, is so many people view it as a second job. The beauty is sometimes they stumble into it, start doing it, don't even realize they're doing knowledge management. They still can, but yet they're collaborating on a daily basis. So that's the benefit of having 16,000 communities. A lot of them are going to fail, and that's fine. We have a lot of successes and we have a lot of failures, but interestingly enough, the ones that go through our formal methodology, the taxonomy, the different workshops that we have available, they do tend to be the ones that are successful. Methodology is valuable. By following this spiral approach with the Secretary of the Air Force Financial Management Organization, we actually were, this is exactly the approach we took. We were working with a small group at a major command, and we showed them the value of knowledge management. They said it was a community practice. They said, "Wow, this is cool." We were able to communicate across the organization to different locations around the world. that needed the content that they had. And then when the Secretary of the Air Force, financial manager, stood up and said, you know what, we're going to start doing knowledge management, this little organization at Wright Pat said, you know what, we've been doing it for a year, let's show you how to do it. And we were able to walk in there, help them develop a high-level taxonomy, and they actually, they're the largest organization within the Air Force that has embraced this knowledge management idea. It is becoming baked into their processes and their mission. In fact, FM objectives, obviously the financial management objectives need to meet FM goals, and then those need to be tied to Air Force goals. And we were pretty excited last year when one of the elements of the financial management objectives was actually knowledge management. That proved to us that they were getting it at the senior level and they saw value in this. Now, what this allowed us to do is then we were able to go in and specify, okay, well, here's some of the strategic steps that we're going to take to meet these objectives. Now, what we did next was we were able to lead them into this knowledge retention and transfer process that I'm talking about, but I had showed you. Before I show you, or talk about it a little bit more, let's talk about the challenge. My guess is you've all seen these statistics. Studies show that humans take in information at 7% based on what a person says, 38% is how you say it, and 55% is body language. That's interesting, but look at that number, look at those numbers again. 7% is based on what you said. That's a very low, disappointingly low number, right? I mean, I said it. What do you mean you didn't understand what I said? How many times have I said that to my kids? But the reality is that how it says, and I've seen this number, what it said, as high as 11%, depending on who you read. But the reality is it's not a very high number. Body language and the tone and the rapidity of how we speak, that all goes into this message that we're communicating whenever we get into this thing called communication. So that is definitely a challenge. Just some interesting things. I look at this list and I become very self-conscious. Because I don't know if you've ever been at a meeting, but you know, the air conditioner can be cranked up kind of high. I'm cold, I cross my arms. You know, as the speaker thinking, I think I'm bored or not interested. You know, pulling in my ear or whatever it is. Somebody interpreting what I'm doing based on some list. An interesting thing is I found many different lists that were kind of cross. They weren't consistent. But the bottom line is that we do read a lot into posture, even if we're doing it subconsciously. We don't even know that we're doing it. We can tell when somebody we're talking to is bored. We can tell when somebody we're talking to is interested. Whether or not they're doing the classic signs of leaning forward when you're talking because you're interested, or putting their hands on their knees because they're interested. You know, those are classics, but you can tell. And that just goes to prove this body language thing is very important. You know, I'm sure we all have stories about sending out an email that was misinterpreted because they couldn't pick up the tone, they couldn't pick in something you thought was sarcastic or humorous came across as a snide comment or rude because they couldn't hear the tone, they couldn't understand. I was just joking. What are you talking about? You're upset about it. I think we've all experienced that. So, with that said, there's value in what we've done. What we've done, and this knowledge retention and transfer process is just one of the tools that we have in our toolbox that we use for various clients and organizations. But basically, it involves video capture and taking that video and making it available on an electronic medium. Now, when this idea first came out, a lot of people were setting up a camcorder, bringing somebody in the room and saying, okay, you're a subject matter expert, go ahead and talk to us. That doesn't work, right? You end up with 2 hours of video that is rambling, and that even if it was good or powerful, nobody watches it once the person's gone. Good idea for execution. So when the Air Force actually asked us, why don't you figure this thing out, see if there's a way we can make it successful in the Air Force, we kind of started from, we didn't start from scratch. We went and that were unsuccessful. But then we ran across the Army was doing something they called Exodus. And they actually were doing a pretty good job of this. So we took some of their processes and we built on them, made them a little bit more customized to the Air Force. And that's pretty much what I'm going to show you here. The steps to our knowledge retention and transfer process are pretty straightforward. However, there's some key components to this list that that's really where the secret sauce lies. Obviously, it is an additional process that we'll do for a specific organization that asks for it, so they have to pay for it. So you typically have to get senior leadership buy-in to spend the money for something like this. Identify who the subject matter experts are, and then assign functional SMEs to assist in the rest of the steps. Let me give you kind of a classic example of what can happen. The financial management organization I mentioned, we have 4 war planners that were retiring at roughly the same time. So literally 100+ years of war planning experience is walking out the door. I'm sure in every one of your organizations you have an example of things just like that. You have a subject matter expert who's leaving, you have somebody who is the go-to person for something. And once they leave, you'll figure it out eventually, but at what cost and how long can it take? And are there things you can try to capture before they actually leave? And so that's kind of the question that we're in. So they came to us and said, okay, you guys are knowledge management experts, make this work. So we did. We said, okay, well, we need your help. We need leadership buy-in. We need a subject matter expert, preferably 2, because we need 4 people that we're interviewing that can support my knowledge architects, which is what I call my knowledge managers. My knowledge architects will execute this process, but we need somebody from the financial management world who can come in and work in parallel with my knowledge architects to make this successful. So we established the team. We call them a harvester team, who the subject matter experts were, and we brought in multimedia. And we developed high-level questions. Now, there is
a question in the section of identifying. It seems like it's a problem popping up that says, oh, we need to go do this. Is there any, have you worked with the Air Force to project risk areas that are well in advance of somebody retiring from the service?
We have not, and that is strictly a funding issue. I mean, that's something that definitely needs to be done. The Air Force Knowledge Now program has really, really broad reach, but very, very short pockets. And that's just a challenge, but I love your idea.
Well, it's my experience at that point where a problem's been identified because somebody's leaving is practically too late.
Right.
As I'm sure you know.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if the next stage in identifying potential risk, I know you can't reach out too far ahead, but I was wondering if there's some thought given to that. And then also, you're looking at the SMEs for who knows what, who's the go-to person. You also look at who will benefit from what you might capture. Is that part of the equation?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that falls into the partially identifying the business imperative and then partially developing a high-level question. But yes, absolutely, because just capturing them saying stuff isn't valuable unless you know who the target audience is going to be once it's over. That's kind of this point. So these high-level questions, that we actually use an approach called appreciative inquiry, and the idea behind appreciative inquiry is that there's a little bit of ego building going on as you're interacting with a subject matter expert. I know none of us like to have our ego stroked, but sometimes subject matter experts do. And so if you could ask questions in such a way that it just causes them to blossom out a little bit more of what they know, it can be very beneficial. So we develop these high-level questions. We work with the subject matter expert who's been assigned, but then we don't surprise the subject matter expert that we're interviewing with these questions. We actually give them the questions ahead of time, and then the interviewer has complete freedom, interviewer has complete freedom to deviate from those questions. Never chase a rabbit. If there's something that pops up, that's fine. So we typically capture about 2 hours with the video, and as I said a few minutes ago, as a block, not really a lot of value in that. And the real value comes in the distillation process. You can see in step 3, we do the interview, we submit the video and audio files for transcription. And then what happens is those transcript files are taken into a room with the identified staying subject matter expert and my team, and they review and distill those videos and listen to them. I have 2 bullet points that talk about this distillation process. But this distillation process is really where the secret sauce is. It's really the power behind the output here. What these key learnings end up being are 1 to 2 minute videos, as long as 2.5 minutes, of very succinct key learnings that come out of these video interviews. Because there is quite a bit of rambling. There is quite a bit of, well, I remember when I was first started, we had to deal with punch cards. That's not a lot of value to the next person coming in. It's an interesting story, but not a lot of value. So a lot of that stuff gets edited out and we end up with some very key learnings that can be leveraged by the watcher. Then the step 5 is make those distilled knowledge objects available for reuse. We typically use we say wiki, copy, etc., but almost in all cases for us, they did all ended up in the wiki. And this proves to be a pretty valuable location for them because our publication process involves putting the video up, putting the text-based transcript up. By putting the text-based transcript up, it's also available in the search engine. So the search engine is going to come across it and be able to take you right to it. And at that point, you can choose, I want to watch the video or I want to read the text. Sir?
Does your process also account for, from the perspective of who may be pulling this up in terms of general knowledge versus somebody who is specifically in the heat of the fire, that type of knowledge?
I'd love to say yes. I'm not sure that'd be an honest answer. We try to publish the information in pretty relevant locations, like just pull the next picture, I think. This is actually a war planner's community of practice, and those videos ended up in their war planning wiki. So it's kind of in the right location. Is it going to always be available to the right person at the right time? Only if they come in. Yes.
You said the search picks it up. Is it tagged when it's distilled, or does the search go into spoken word and tag it that way?
No, it's able to read it just because of the text-based piece that we upload as well. It does not listen to the video. I know that technology is available, but like I said, short pockets for the airports.
How are you doing transcription? Are you doing it manually or using software?
Manually. Actually, we're outsourcing that. There's a company that will do it for like 40 cents a minute. It's pretty cheap for what we're doing.
And have you calculated the cost of each of these, like per hour? It sounds like a lot of labor for a little video.
Yeah, that's a tremendous point. It is not a cheap process. You really only want to do this for high value exits. And in this case, the financial management organization felt that it was worth the dollar amount.
Besides the ego stroking that you mentioned, is there any incentive for them to contribute and really free flow their information?
No, one thing we do require is to start at least 6 months ahead of time. So when I'm talking to somebody who's only got 30 days left, they typically at that point haven't totally disengaged from their job, and by some of the ego stroking and talking to them about what, boy, this place isn't going to be able to do well without you, try to get them excited about what the legacy they're able to leave in the last couple of months.
Is it focused on exit only, or because of the short pockets, you're not able to get into an ongoing contextual type of capture? That may be a longer session, maybe part of SCORM compliant training.
Yeah, that's a good point. So far, all we've done is exit interviews. But really the process is called knowledge retention and transfer. We can do it at any phase, if that makes sense. That's a great point. But to date, it's always been somebody who's leaving, unfortunately. This is just a short video of something we captured. I hope the volume is okay.
Are you
you're giving your folks something to do, and you give them a task, whatever it is, and the suspense date comes due, and they give you the product, and if your first thought is, man, they really screwed this up, they don't care, they're not thinking, I think that's the wrong way. If you really believe it's not about you, the question you ought to ask is, they wanted to do this way. Nobody gets up in the morning and looks at themselves in the mirror and goes, let me see how bad I can do this up. They want to come to work, they want to be appreciated, and they want to be appreciated. And so the first question I ask in my mind is, what did I as a supervisor not do that would have enabled them to be successful now? What was the guidance I gave them poorly communicated? Was it difficult to understand? Did I give them an impossible task? Did I not prepare them adequately with the training or the intent or whatever to get the job? In my mind, those are the first things you ought to be thinking about. And if you think that way, then it's not about you. It's about them and what you do or don't do.
I picked that video clip because I thought it was applicable to anybody. Some of the, when I looked at the FM War Planner videos, a lot of them were like, I have no idea what he's talking about. So I just picked one. This was actually from an effort we did with A1, which is manpower in the Air Force. And that was one of the video clips that resulted from that. So in closing, Air Force Knowledge Now is a very, like I said, it's a very broad program. It has all the communities of practice. We have the methodology. We've actually developed our own maturity model with the 5 tiers, similar to the Software Engineering Institute's maturity model. I mean, we're not the first one to have a PAN maturity model, but it actually works for us. One thing that makes ours a little bit different is we have a self-assessment tool that actually was developed by PhD to help organizations identify and assess where they are within the maturity matrix on 5 major keys like leadership and barriers and so it's not just technology. It's kind of what I'm trying to say. We actually have an approach and methodology behind this knowledge management program for the Air Force. That's really pretty impressive. So what's coming up for us? What do we really need to focus on? Sparking Air Force networks, keep these communities growing, thriving, flourishing, and identify ones that need to be developed that don't already exist. Reflect focus on the network airmen across the Air Force processes. One thing about our technology system is it is XML based, so we can actually communicate to other systems across the Air Force, which works out very, very well. And then broaden the use of the knowledge retention and transfer tool from novelty to mainstream. As much as I'd love to stand up here and tell you that, yeah, this is used all over the Air Force, the reality is we've only done it a handful of times, probably less than 15 times for different organizations. And I would love to see this used a lot more, because I think that there's value in this. But the reality is it's going to be used more when the value is proven. Right? It's easy for me to say there's value, but just like all the rest of our tools in Air Force Knowledge Now, they're only going to be used